Oklahoma and Tulsa in particular is a genuine crossroads of Southern music history and culture. And in myriad ways, but one of the ways that I've really spent a lot of time thinking about it of late is through the Leon Russell story. And this is a conversation with Teresa Knox, School of Hard Knocks, Knox, love it, who saved Leon Russell's studio called the Church Studio in Tulsa, and just has she's got a really great story. But in my case, digging a little bit deeper into the Leon Russell story with her and her vision for this site. History and historic sites matter. They matter to me and they matter to you, and that's the gist of this conversation. And of course, music matters. Here's Teresa Knox and yours truly, chopping it up from the crossroads of Southern music history and culture, Tulsa style.
We're very close to the same age. I was born in 1971. Floridian. I was born in Florida, and really connected to my family's southernness, even though I was living in this little beach town called Stewart, just north of Miami. And when I first heard Southern inflected rock music, Southern, really what's called Southern rock, for me it was like, oh, that's my sound. Those are my people. And at that point, like when I was coming of age, like 10, 11 years old, you're 81, 82, it was like Molly Hatchet and 38. So what 38 special, Skinner was already done. The Allman Brothers were in really sad shape by then. And Leon Russell, sort of has been that talisman for you. I know for Bob Blackburn, whom I came to know decades ago when we did some work together. And when who really never spent any time there, I have been in a deep Leon Russell dive. And it started with Tedeschi Trucks releasing their lock-in set with Leon.
Yes.
I reread the Janovitz book, and I have watched both movies multiple times.
Wow.
And
that's incredible.
It was like, it was sort of like, for me, it was kind of time. And visiting y'all right when that album came out, I'm on this road trip with my daughter, playing her that album because she was stuck in the car with me. And, it's not, she doesn't tolerate it. She digs it. It's not maybe her jam. So it was a perfect convergence. And as I was like, reading and listening to you speak, and I was like, you have created that space. It started as a historic site, sort of like, your first thing was like preservation, like, hey, whoa, this matters. Save this place, right? Like that was your initial instinct.
That's right. I mean, it was, very dilapidated, and it's like, man, we gotta fix this up and save it and preserve it and restore it so it can be here another century or more.
And your first instinct was also to turn it into a historic site / museum, yes?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a music memorabilia collector, so I thought, this would be a great place to store these items. And, like you, I'm a parent. I have 3 adult children, and they dig that. I mean, I inundated them with music, especially from the 70s. And I don't know, probably they got sick of it. But, I don't think that, especially Gen Z, they don't get attached to things the way we do.
True.
I mean, I'm a collector and I'm very brand loyal. I go back to the same sales, I want to, but they're very fluid. And I think that's great. I mean, there's so many great, I don't want to criticize that generation. It's just very different. And so I thought, the church studio, once I renovated it, would be a great place to store these artifacts that I had collected over the years. And so, yeah, that kind of came around the same time of wanting to restore it. And then, of course, eventually I came to the realization that this has to go back to being a recording studio. I mean, I could not think about anything else except to making it relevant to today's musician.
That, I don't know how much work you've spent in like the historic sites field, other than, I know that you've have connections with the historic studios. That's our mantra. I mean, that's the one thing that I have been preaching and writing about for
I
30
love that.
years. It means nothing as a standalone opportunity around, including to me. And we talk about the relevance a lot. And you use the studio relevance. How soon after, though, did you go like, okay, museum is not going to financially sustain us? Because I mean, that's a known fact that a whole bunch of people, oh, turn it into a museum. And you're like, yeah, I'm so sorry,
Well,
but $20 admissions does not sustain a $1 million business operation. It can't.
right.
So,
No, and museum didn't really come to mind. It was more like, I'm going to have a kick-ass girl cave and my friends can use it and rent it out, and it would be more decor on the walls. But it was
ah,
shortly after that I went to Detroit and met Jack White. He was living in Tulsa at the time, but he was in Detroit. And he has Third Man Records and a pressing plan. And I have a building, I have several buildings in the neighborhood of the church studio. And I thought, I don't know, I really wanted to learn more, but I stopped at Motown and the museum, Motown Museum.
mhm.
I loved it. I mean, it was so cool. The docents would sing as they were going through, but it didn't sit well with me. I mean, they did a beautiful job. And I know since then they have invested millions of dollars in a renovation, but it kind of made me sad because I love Motown music. My kids, do they like? Probably not. I have from Gen Z to millennial. And I don't know, there's something about it just didn't sit right with me. And when I came back to Tulsa, I met with several people in the music industry and where they record and, what they would like to see. And I just I don't know, I just felt compelled to, bringing it back to being a recording studio. And then I went on kind of an adventure across the country visiting recording studios. And you talk about the business model and the strategy um, of a museum. Well, you should look at the business model of a recording studio. I mean, we charge what Leon Russell charged in 1972. I mean, there are so many viable alternative and substitute products for record, like what we're doing now. You're recording it, and it's going to be a heck of a recording. I mean, you don't need the
Yep.
studio like how we're full blown analog digital. We have a really big space. We brought in 28 miles of wire. I mean, the acoustics are fantastic. And of course, I love analog recording. I love the warmth of it. I think it sounds a lot better. I think it's healthier to our ears and our brain than compressed music. But I see the beauty and the value on all the technology and digital capture. But it's a terrible business model. And even the top studios, in the country, I mean, they're struggling, and so many have shut down. They're just a museum, maybe like RCA Studio B or Sun or Stax. I mean, we have a mutual friend, Jeff, who runs that.
Mhm.
But it's a really tough model out there. So honestly, I didn't think about the financial implications. Even though I'm a business person, I come from the for-profit world. I don't come from the nonprofit world. But it took a life of its own that really was out of my control. But anyway, long way to answer your question, but maybe not a great business model being a museum, maybe not a great business model being a recording studio.
Right.
We're kind of there's not a model quite like ours that I've been able to find in the country doing a little bit of everything. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned, we're a recording studio. That's our primary function.
And that is what, it is sustaining the operations. But you are also doing gangbusters gate revenue. At least you were, early, straight out of the gate,
Yes.
like, and so, my particular mojo here, right, isn't just like this kind of fascination with Leon Russell that's always been there. I have a feeling he played a show in Gainesville that I saw like when I was like a young teenager, and it was kind of sad. It was that era when he wasn't really, you could see it. He was once really great, and at the time I was too young to think about somebody grinding like that as a hero, right? Like,
Right.
But I came to him late, and it was really that Mad Dogs when Tedeschi Trucks came together, and then, they played a lot of that canon, but it's the history, that you feel when you walk in that space. And that like is very clear in the ways that, you personally have communicated. I think the church itself has, and there is a, kind of the spiritual nature that undergirds it. Now, I'm a history geek from way back, right? I feel that standing in front of my grandmother's tomb, and I felt it at Gettysburg, and I felt it standing in Muscle Shoals Sound before it got cleaned up. That's clearly a part of what makes this such an attractive studio opportunity for people. And that's also keeps it alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a living, breathing archive in itself, in addition to the things that we've added to it. But I know the first time after I bought it sight unseen, but walking up the stairs and walking in the door, and that even though it was mold and just, there was water had penetrated the building, and, but, you think about this century old building, the early church congregation, and then later in the early 70s when Leon Russell acquired it. And you think about, all the people that walked through those doors from, Bob Dylan and George Harrison, Eric Clapton, Kansas, the Gap Band, Leon himself, Willie Nelson. I mean, as a music fan and collector, and so proud, especially of our Oklahoma artists, it's hard to describe how you feel. I never use the word vibe, but musicians use that. Oh, I love the vibe in here. And, it's all kind of connected. But, Oklahoma only became a state in 1907. The church was finished in 1915. So, this
is your love for place and your particular place in, Tulsa, your community. I want to, where does that, talk to me about place. Talk to me about you can talk to me about Tulsa. You can talk to me about Teresa. You can talk to me, I'll give you an example. If for me, my family, my dad grew up on a chicken farm in Babson Park, Florida, a town with no stoplight, and off of Beatty Road. And so every time I go to Babson Park, I never stole the sign. I'll just take a picture of the sign, touch the sign. The farm is not in the family's hands. It's kind of just scrubland still now. But that's, one of those place things. I could talk about Macon, Georgia too, the same way, walking through Rose Hill Cemetery and just being like, I can feel where this music I love comes from, So
Mm-hmm.
the place is a really important part of your repertoire, your particular repertoire.
I think so. I mean, I've never put it in those terms, but I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm fourth generation. And I just, from a very young age, I wasn't proud of, I hate to say this, I love my family so much, but I wasn't proud of our situation.
Yeah.
We were very, very poor. I was ashamed of my home. I was ashamed that we didn't have a car. I was ashamed that no one worked in my family. And so, but I would come across people that relocated, their family came to Oklahoma. And at a really young age, I would learn all of I knew all of these things. My mother always did you know this was invented here? Or Mickey Mantle was born here? Or, and it's something that I controlled. I learned everything that I could about Oklahoma history and famous people that came from here. And it really inspired me. And at a very young age, around 8 years old, discovering Leon Russell, I thought, wow, this guy with scraggly hair.
Yeah.
That was very, very handsome. And his top hat is he's from my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he's famous. And the first item I collected is this Slurpee cup with Leon Russell on the front. And then there's a little bio. I showed it to you when you came to the studio. Mm-hmm. But it's wow, someone from the exact spot that I was born is on a Slurpee cup. And then you start seeing all of these other musicians and learning about Jim Keltner at a really young age. It's wow, he's on everyone's record. He's so famous. And then J.J. Kell. And then I love the power pop of Dwight Twilley. And, I thought that was so amazing. And I just got this sense of pride. And hitting my early 20s, I became like the go-to person. Oh, my cousin's moving here. Will you like give him the spiel on Oklahoma and that sort of thing? And so I just became a cheerleader. And I don't know, it's just something I have a really deep sense of pride, in our state. And I've never wanted to live anywhere else. I don't even travel. And a lot of people probably think that's really sad, but I just have never had a desire to live anywhere else. And I love it. And these buildings, I almost personify them. You think about all the story, and this, you're a historian, but you think about the church in particular, think about all of the funerals, all of the celebrations of families, that people came together and built that building. They broke bread together. They had a lot of happy memories. I'm sure there was a lot of, heartbreak, especially when you think about, going through World War I, the Great Depression, the race massacre of 1921, the Vietnam War, civil unrest. I mean, all of those things happened, and the building was there, and it has stood, through all of this time. And then its conversion from a sanctuary to this rock and roll recording studio that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers got their start. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And I love being the caretaker of that. But the story wasn't documented. There were bits and pieces here. There were exaggerations. There were untruths. But not even Leon himself knew the history of the building, when it was a church and a congregation. So being able to document that, I feel like that was really important. I'm not going to be here forever. And so getting that put together, documenting it, not only in our archive, but in the book Sanctuary of Sound was super important to me, because I was able to piece everything together. And we talked about interpretation. And I think that I did a decent job, because I have interviewed over 400 people, and everyone has a different recollection, especially those that are still alive that were around in the 70s. So, piecing it all together, was really exciting, but it was great to get it documented.
That particular part of it, right? And I'm struck, like you said, it's a sanctuary, and then it turned into a sanctuary for rock and roll, is what I was thinking in my head, right? Like, and so the let's talk 7-Eleven cup. So, that is the version of baseball cards, right? From that era, part of that, right? The things that you collected and traded, and then those who cherished and kept these things. And I know the Allman Brothers had one. I have yet to track one down, just because I have yet to have tracked one down, but you did share that with me when I was there. Your archives room, again, you're talking to a true nerd in these things. Okay. So, I just dearly loved it. I dearly, dearly, dearly loved it. I loved how much was on display. I loved how it was, interpreted, meaning you just helped me understand, you help people understand the material they were looking at. You weren't saying like, here's the story of blah, 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 right? The open storage concept for museums or archives rooms, anything like that, it's just always been one of my favorite things. Do you share any thoughts to how you found your way to doing that? And I know things rotate and stuff, just like from an exhibition side, what is it? And let's talk just the archives room, and then we'll get back downstairs in the main gallery.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mean, most of my items came from garage sales and thrift stores, hand-me-downs. And so I never really thought of it as an actual archive until our local billionaire acquired the Bob Dylan archive and paid, I don't know, people said $27 million. And I was like, what? And I had a chance to look at it. And I was like, wow, I have a lot of really cool stuff. So I started calling it an archive. And then I splurged on these cabinets that are the same brand that you'll see at the Smithsonian. And so I really wanted to elevate that. And so, but I do have some really incredible pieces. So like, for example, when Derek and Susan of Tedeschi Trucks, I mean, they've been with us a couple of times, but the second time I knew they were coming. So I have a pretty significant Mad Dogs and Englishmen from 1970 collection. And of course, there's such a tie-in with Leon, not only working with Joe Cocker, but it was during that time period that he and his British business partner, Danny Cordell, formed Shelter Records, which
Right.
I'm very enthralled by that record. It was a very short-lived record label, but it
Yep.
was so entrepreneurial and it was so innovative at the time. And so I'm really obsessed with their business model. So I started collecting, I have lots of Shelter Records items. And even Joe wearing that sequin Shelter Record shirt, on tour. So again, we knew that they were coming. So getting out those things and rotating them in the cabinet was really, really important. Lucas Nelson came over. And so we had some things, a lot of Willie items that we pulled out. And obviously Willie's collaboration with Leon Russell. And so it's kind of driven by that. Right now, we are working on a Route 66 exhibit. A lot of people don't know, but Tulsa, Oklahoma is the capital of Route 66, and 2026 is the 100th anniversary of the Mother Road. So when you think about us being the epicenter of Route 66 and its tie into music, specifically, a lot of the musicians that were very well rehearsed when artists would travel from Chicago to LA and stop in Tulsa. So we're, creating this story that hasn't really been told before, but tying it into the Shelter Records artists, Leon, JJ, David Gates, all of those artists. That's relevant to a lot of the tourists that are coming into Tulsa this year. So, it really changes. So we like to, again, rotate things out. And a lot of archives, you have to know someone to get back there, or it's only for VIPs. Well, it's the People's Church. The early citizens of Tulsa literally built this building. And Leon Russell was very open in the 70s. He would let local musicians come in. He wanted to propel their career, getting them outside of just the Tulsa, Oklahoma market. So of course we have to be an open place, and in the archive is for anyone. And so we even have the academic types that are writing books or doing research, and, they have the ability to schedule time and go through all of the things that we have.
Yeah, that's a piece for me that really stands out. Your kind of commitment to sharing these things publicly. That again, I do this, this is my job. What you have learned to do intuitively, instinctively, put on the thing is top notch. This is the kind of stuff that we're all like, yes. Do these things and do these things. And you will reap the benefit. It's not maybe will something come out of it. It all really starts with community and relevance, which is, what a church is in the first place, what what the church studio was pre today, and that does come through. And I'll tell you the rotating, the making things available for people if you have the time. You can't always do it for everybody, but that stuff matters. And is rotating exhibits part of your strategy for visitorship at all, or is it just kind of it's time, let's move this? Because you had Mad Dogs in when I was there too. Really great. I have video. I should look at it again.
Yeah,
actually, I loved it.
They were with us about the same time. So yes, that's great. We don't have a full-time museum staff. I mean, it's all about the acoustics and the sound. And, we had 1,500 musicians in 2025 come through our doors. I mean, it's just crazy. And then 10,000 visitors or more. And so, balancing the act of, yes, we're a tourist attraction, we're a museum, we have lots of programming sprinkled in, and then recording 5, 6, 7 days a week. I mean, we averaged 5 days in 2025. It looks like 2026, 6 days a week recording. And so, but yeah, we need to rotate it because part of our business model, one of our profit centers is a membership program. And so we have about 500 members. We have this very bold goal in 2026 to double that, because we know that members, they come back, they support, they buy merch, they buy tickets. We have ticketed events, and they are just super fans. They're brand ambassadors. And, probably the number one strategic goal I have is building our digital DNA side by side our brick and mortar operation. That's really, really, really important. So we have content that goes out 7 days a week across different platforms. Some platforms, our biggest platform would probably be YouTube. We get 1.5 to 2 million views a month. And so Facebook, we just hit 2 million views in a 28-day period. And so that's really great. I mean, it's not huge dollar amounts because we're monetized on both of those platforms, but we've noticed that our audience is outside of Oklahoma. I mean, I'm a diehard Okie, and I want our locals to be proud that, the Tulsa sound that was birthed here at the church studio and all the great artists and the new artists that get inspired by it, that have relevant careers today. But we made an impact on American music, and the Europeans love it. I mean, every week we have someone from the UK or Australia or Japan, and it's like they're obsessed with all things Americana. And that makes me so excited and so proud. So, something that was kind of secondary, the museum has turned, we want it to be. And, I'm hoping this year we can add more team members. We're small, but we're a mighty team. But again, the whole social media aspect, you got to feed the beast. And, we're online. So, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yes to everything that you just said, because the issue is really what is your primary business, and it is a studio, but you are a studio at a historic site. That's really what the thing is, right? Yes. The displays are even kind of tertiary because you're in the space. That is enough. That like in a lot of places. But you have this amazing collection. You want to show it off, and there are people who love that shit, including yours truly, and it's all like there, and that's the cool part. And the only reason to rotate things is for your locals, is the repeat visitors, right? And if you're getting visitors from all, most people are first timers from 50 miles out or something. A new exhibition isn't going to do anything, or whatever. You've got, that's strategically your historic site, the archives part is, it's not even a loss leader, because you've got to be doing pretty good gate revenue, although that may be just neutrals out all of the people you have to hire to just get 10,000 people in the door. And,
Right. And of course we, kids, veterans, we have free days. Our members have free access. But we have live music 3 days a week. It's called Tunes at Noon. So that's one of our programs. It's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I think we're going to add second quarter, we're going to add a fourth day. So that's really great to give people something to listen to and do. We have a lounge, so we actually have a bar. And so we have alcohol revenue and mocktail and coffee revenue as in addition. And then we're also an audio engineering school. We're licensed by the State Department of Education. Yeah. And education is so important. So, as I'm thinking about a lot of this, we have to be a workforce engine. And so how can we be relevant to not only school tours and secondary education, but also post-secondary? We're an internship site. I love interns. I can't have too many, from hospitality with our musicians to venue rental to all of those things, to the archive, data entry, IT. We have an intern right now, and he's making a companion app for us, and it has a virtual tour on it and that sort of thing. So even though we're an analog studio, we have analog exhibits, we're kind of old school. We have to have these digital pieces, appendages. And so how do we do that thoughtfully without having VR and all the other crazy, Meow Wolf stuff going on that other museums have. We want to keep it old school because, as you know, what is old is new again, as evidenced by 19 consecutive years of vinyl growth. So, again, just trying to come at it from a fresh perspective, being thoughtful of the past, but we, again, from our social media, our digital content curation, I mean, it's strategic every single day.
Yeah, you're right. You can accomplish the goals of what switching an exhibit does by adding an additional day of something for people to come and do, like the music or something, right? Like you don't have to rotate it. Like that's a strategy that works for true pure museums who are drawing or trying to draw a thing. Attention is what attention is and where it comes from, right? Like you're like, oh, there was a time when I remember building at the first museum I worked for, the one where I cut my teeth open 26 years ago. Now at the first time I opened a museum, I just finished the other one. There were people arguing that if we put photographs of the exhibits up online, that people wouldn't want to come.
Yes.
And I said, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. I said, because if you're even going to allow that, now this is like 1990, if you're going to allow that thought to come in, what's the point of having exhibitions with artifacts? If you truly believe, like you ultimately, you still can't replace the real thing. That's where I'm getting at. No matter what, people who want the real thing. But if the best I can do is hear Teresa Knox speak lovingly about this place when I'm in Poland, because I love Leon Russell or J.J. Cale, then you are providing them and not just Teresa. I understand it's not just you, but I looked and saw your name and it popped out as I was speaking, no, but the idea being, right?
People are afraid. Museums, traditional museums, and even businesses, they don't want to put their prices online because they're salespeople. They think they need to get them in front of them to do the conversion from, a lead to a paying customer. And I think, people can find information. So you need to, putting everything out there, it gets people excited. I think I don't know. I agree with you. You were ahead of your time when you were doing that, and it's super important.
Okay. So, 1,500 musicians, you are running five days a week sessions, and it is because you have built this brand that it is worth it to come into this historic space and do this for you, and you keep prices reasonable, and your overhead is what as a nonprofit, right? You just have to you just got to earn your nut. That's it. I'm basically a nonprofit, right? Like my business is just, right, exactly. But you just want to do that, like, and that allows you, some freedom from having to, appease investors or, even yourself, right? Having to be able to pay yourself a salary.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take a salary. I'm a volunteer CEO, but I do fund, funded this whole thing. And, I just think it's really important. And I didn't start out thinking, oh, I'm going to have this nonprofit museum recording studio. It was like, this looks like crap. It's ugly on Leon Russell's legacy, and it needs to be fixed up. And so just with my past businesses, I've owned commercial real estate. I've done new construction. I've done renovation. And so, I mean, that was my tunnel vision at the beginning. But, you talked about sustainability at the beginning. We have to have a sustainable model. And we are definitely breaking even. And I think we'll do really well this year. I mean, we have a grant program so our local artists can record at no charge. We want to give back as much as possible because, again, it's the people's church. That's what the building was built for, after the turn of the century. And so, but on the other hand, we need to be smart. We need a strategic plan. We can't expect some, rich guy to just give us donations all the time. So those profit centers are really, really important in order for us to achieve our mission. And so that's why we measure, we look at numbers on a regular basis. We do a lot of, surveys, satisfaction surveys. We pull in a lot of qualitative data. I come from, a background in higher education that, you establish SMART goals, and that's really, really important. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. And that's for all of our stakeholders. And it's usually not a good business strategy to have, lots of different things that you do. But, it was required of this. We need to have students. We need to have members. We need to have tourists. We need to have locals. We need Leon Lifers, which are Leon Lifer super fans. We need to have musicians of all types. We need to have record labels. We need to have other cultural sites. Our vendors are stakeholders. I mean, that makes things really broad, but we can have, many campaigns and strategic plans based upon all those individual stakeholders.
When did you move to the nonprofit, and was that a tough decision for you to do that?
It was, in a way, because I'm a capitalist at heart. And so only in America can you start something with nothing. And I really love that. But early on, there's a local museum that isn't open yet, but they're called OK Pop.
I'm aware.
Across from Kane's Ballroom. And the executive director at the time, we were just I was like, tell me about what you guys are doing. And because they have a significant Leon Russell collection, and they have Bob Wills tour bus. And, he said, maybe we could do a revenue share on tickets. When tourists come into town, they jump on Bob Wills tour bus and they can go around. And this was, 9 years ago, because my renovation took 6.5 years. So this was way before I even got listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So he said, the only thing is we only collaborate with nonprofits. And then knowing that the Bob Dylan Center is opening and that sort of thing, everyone preferred at the time, and still today, to work with other nonprofits. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a hybrid model. I'm going to form a nonprofit, and then it will be available for, projects and programming like this. Well, when we opened March of 2022, I realized, one, musicians, they're not making any money, and they don't have any money. So what can we do to open new opportunities for them so we can get the next Leon Russell to come out of Tulsa, Oklahoma? And then I noticed music programs were diminishing in our public schools. So band directors and teachers that say, oh, I have this student, he's so talented. And, and then we had other nonprofits, like the opera and the symphonies and all of these other music related nonprofits, that they were struggling. And they're like, can we use the church for this? Will you record this? Will you do that? And then I had the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce in our state they're recruiting big businesses like Facebook or Meta and Google and Amazon. But for those companies to convince their employees to relocate to Oklahoma, they want to know about our city. And so we had these big employers bringing employees by, and I find myself selling them like, yeah, you should move here. It's a great place to live. And we have this really cool very magical musical heritage that I think you would dig. And so we were selling for the Department of Commerce we're not getting paid or anything. I never imagined. And then the film department, we became a certified soundstage because people like the look of, and we have a film incentive in the state. You get like 36 cents on the dollar as a rebate. But no one had any money, and they needed us to donate the facility, donate our staff, donate our recording time. And so after my first year, this is year 3 that we've been open. My first year, I thought we need to be a nonprofit. I mean, we're giving everything away. And so I just knew I needed to do that. So the second year, I made 100% of our operations. So everything from merchandise to admissions to venue rental to tuition to bar sales, everything goes into our nonprofit. I still own the building, I own the archive, and I own all of the gear. At some point, I hope to be in a position I will just, hand it over to the nonprofit. But right now, it just kind of makes sense for me to keep that in my for-profit entity. But again, I volunteer all of my time, and of course, when we have a financial shortfall, I'm there to contribute.
One of my early mentors taught me, in fact, I'm talking to him in a couple of weeks too, but he said, stewardship is the open hand, not the closed fist. What is it that I can do? What is it that we can do for you? Community or whomever. And it sounds like these partnerships that you've had have really, that's what's made what you do flourish. The thing that I wanted to say, that's where I was going. Founders, you mentioned founders syndrome potentially with when you sold the school. And this was the idea that was between the selling of the school and then this project is the one that kind of is what you have moved to. You're an entrepreneur. You move quickly. You have a tremendous track record of success. And the idea of saying, and I really appreciate this about what I learned about you is I got to step away because if I stay here, I'm going to drive everybody crazy, including myself. Founder syndrome is a very, very, very real.
It is.
And even when it's a super charismatic leader, it's not always, but founder syndrome is particularly so. You're being strategic about how you're approaching your leadership of this institution. Obviously, you have the time, the effort, and can afford to pull no salary at this point. But at some point, you're going to want to do that. I need to raise some more capital.
Absolutely. Right? I hired executive director. 3 years ago, we had no employees and we have a team of 14 right now. And so they're all paid employees, but we also have a very, very robust volunteer program. We have nearly 200 volunteers.
Yes.
And so I feel like they're older. So I feel like I'm kind of running I'm back in the college business for seniors, because you have to recruit them, you have to delight them, you have to exceed their expectations, you have to provide continuing education, you measure attrition rates. And so I really love the community. And again, that's the purpose of the church, is this community. And so, but I'm so hands-on. I bartend, I do tours, I clean, I get to know everyone. And then I'm falling into that trap of, the entity being this whole founder's dilemma. And I didn't even know what that was until I came across, it was a book called Founder's Dilemma. I was like, holy shit, that's me. Like, I'm like obsessed with people say you need to get to a point where you're working on the business, not in the business. Well, I don't agree with that. It's like, I don't believe in work-life balance. They're all integrated and it's just my style. I don't advocate it for everyone. But, I want to get to know everyone. And that's what connects us as humans. The world's so, broken and divisive. This is a space that, music brings everyone together and this love for this amazing cultural site. But on the other hand, all of our days are numbered. So I'm not doing the organization any favors. One, if I make it all about Leon Russell, and I hate to say that because I'm such a huge fan and there'd be no church studio without him, but it can't be the Leon Russell Museum, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what, and
I don't think I've verbalized that before, but it can't be, and it can't be about Teresa. And sometimes, I'm there, it's like, and so I have these things I had to get the book to document the history. I have to get all these interviews I've done and put them online. I've got to train. I have to create standard operating procedures. I have to create the organizational chart. And I'm not saying I know all this because it's fluid and we want to respond to market conditions quickly. And because with AI, everything's changing so rapidly, but I know basics in business infrastructure and I have to establish that. And then, there will be a point where no one even knows who I am. And I think that will be great.
Well, and I'll say yes to everything you just said. And I will say this is the beauty of your approach. This conversation from the crossroads of Southern music history and culture. The ways that you speak about the church, the ways that the church speaks about the church. Like you said, people's church, the church studio it's a church. It had its Leon Russell period. It had its Steve Ripley period. It had its dilapidation period. It has had its Teresa Knox School of Hard Knocks period. Let's call it that. Let's call it the School of Hard Knocks period. And that's baked into, that will be baked into the culture regardless. The admiration I have legit for when leaders think strategically about their exits is, I think, really good, and it's healthy for the leader. It's healthy for the organization as well. That's an awesome segue to the change over time aspect of your work, which is at the core of historic preservation. And speaking of Jim Vaughn, the guy whose thing is on this pencil, so we're bringing it all the way back to a hero of mine, worked for the National Trust for Historic Preservation for more than a decade as a senior vice president, and the historic sites were under his purview. And did Drayton Hall in South Carolina. It was the first time I ever saw an antebellum mansion in any state other than Southern Finery. Are you familiar with Drayton Hall at all in South Carolina?
No.
It's a plantation home. The Draytons, I think it's the Drayton family, gave it to the National Trust, and their interpretation was to leave it in the condition that they received it. So it is unfurnished, unscrubbed clean. It's legit it's like what you did with the outside by not removing the permastone, even though you're like, God, this looks so much better with the brick. But the permastone is part of the change over time, or reinstalling some of the pieces you did, or some of the pieces of wood. That's a part of your aesthetic or ethic that predates this particular project. Yes, you have a very strong preservation aesthetic.
Yes. I mean, you think about, this was a unique project because how can we honor the early church that was all brick, and there's still brick on the west side of the building, and the aesthetic of the pews and all of 11 wood species that are in the building, but have that 70s Leon Russell vibe and his vision during that period of significance, which is 72 to 76, but have, add on that keeps the addition subordinate to the mother property, the original church, and, have modern amenities and a modern kind of transitional aesthetic, as you call it. And so it was very, very challenging, but very, very exciting, because you can walk through and see something very modern. Then you see things with the 70s vibe, like our conference room. We have 70s chairs. We have an avocado green mohair sofa, and then you see, elements from 1915 in the property from the early church. So, I mean, it's really great. And I'm compelled to pay attention to the provenance of the building and from an architecture perspective. And I'm not trained in that or anything like that, but it's just something that just seems common sense and just really important.
I think you say it best, right? When it's gone, it's gone. That's the tragedy to me about sorts of, well, look, I'm Fillmore East, right? Let's get to this. I mean, that building only came down in 1997. The whole theater was still there. It was just dilapidated. Today, if that place was there, the billions, millions of dollars they would make doing concerts. Instead, it's a bunch of, that the facade is there in New York City, and that's it. Well, the lobby, it's still a lobby.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think everyone in every town, they know of beautiful historic properties that have been razed.
And I understand. I'm a Floridian, right? There is nothing Florida won't bulldoze for a development, right? There's no swamp they won't drain to do it. Find some ways around it. It is as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. That is a truism, and that's why so much of Florida is like 1950 forward. And I'm not like I think the thing about preservation, right? One of the things you could have done, didn't do. I love the girl cave part. I think that's just the best ever. I'd be like, can I please be one of your girls and come over to the girl cave at the studio, pick up an instrument and jam?
Awesome.
Like please. And I didn't actually, I didn't catch exactly that was like your initial vision for, let me buy this cool place and do this. You also thought it was going to be a lot less expensive to renovate. It was
Yes.
in a lot, was it in worse shape, much worse shape than you thought? And I know you said you bought it sight unseen. So it was like you signed thing, you regretted it for about 24 hours and then we're like,
Well,
oh,
for
no,
good.
no.
Yeah, so I knew it was bad because I had been walking the property, but you really don't know until you start doing, it's not like I did, you buy a house, you get all the inspections done. I didn't do anything like that
Yeah.
and prior to the purchase. So I just knew I had to have it. Not like a spoiled brat type thing. It's just that I don't know. I I just had this dream of, this building, and I just knew I had to do what I had to do. So,
And the first thing was to snap it up. And
yeah.
then you walk in there and you start peeling apart layers, and it's a 6-year project. Did you have an idea? Was it in your mind? Was it 2 years? Was
Yeah,
it
2 years was what we had planned for. But, the building was imploding. The foundation was very compromised. We had to go down to bedrock to
right?
rebuild the foundation and to protect it from water penetration. And so there was just a lot of foundational things that we needed to do. And then during that time, I got listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We are individually listed because we are not in a designated historic neighborhood. And then, just following those best practices set forth by National Park Service. And that that was a nightmare. I call them the Hysterical Society. And I've done 4 projects now that I did tax credits. I actually didn't get a tax credit on this one. I had planned on it and it was devastating. They had turnover at the state preservation office, and the lady that was in charge, really gave me a hard time about, because, I could have said it's significant. If I could go back in time, I should have done this maybe, but the significance was due to the early church. But I felt like what Leon did was so innovative. It was home office to shelter records. The artists that came through here, no one ever called Leon an entrepreneur, but it was so cool. And so I felt strongly that he needs credit from his work from 72 to 1976. And then I remember saying, like, she wasn't even from Oklahoma. She was like, well, who's Leon Russell? This is stupid. And was almost insulting about the part of the application. And then there were some other things. They came and said, oh, you can't move forward with these windows. And so I had to still pay a construction crew, and we were waiting. So finally at the end, I said, screw it. I don't care if I get a tax credit or not. And we just moved forward. But it was very counter, because and they started sending people over, like, we're the poster child for historic preservation. We literally followed everything. I spent so much extra on everything being period specific, and they made it very, very difficult. And even the Department of the Interior in Washington, D.C., this guy is a huge music fan, and he had opinions. So, there are historic buildings all the time, and they apply for tax credit. They're using plastic. They're not even doing it the right way. So I'm not a bitter person, but
No.
I was like, you guys are ridiculous. So that was very costly dealing with them, these government people. So.
And was not your first historic preservation tax credit thing. It's, I'm just going to say, shame. And you're absolutely right. Shame on the State Historic Preservation Board. Yes, I think probably a wider time period would have going for the OG sort of this historic building may have tickled their particular fancy, but it's not the particular fancy is the part that bothers me. You know what I mean? Like a single person makes this thing for this incredible gift to the community. Like you're kidding me, right? Like that's not how this works, or should. And so Shame.
Thank
A
you.
pox on their
Shame
house.
on them. I love that. Yes. Well, I'm kind of over it now. I was traumatized for a little bit, but
I'll hold it. I'll hold it on for you from here on out. You have given me the another frustrating example I can use when I'm teaching workshops or working with clients about like, are you kidding me?
yeah.
Because and it could also be, when did you submit it? Was it 2020? Was it because there's that 50-year rule? So you submitted it after 2022?
Yes. So I actually was able to submit it prior to the 50-year rule. So that was one good thing that happened, but the whole thing backfired. So, but we went all the way through part 3, and then, they said, just kidding, we can't do this. So, it's a torturous. We need another 2 hours to talk about everything that went wrong. But there were so many things that went right. I was more detailed than ever on historic preservation and learned a lot during that process. And, when you're knocked down like that, I just know that something better is going to be there.
And again, it's my friend and fellow traveler, I just want to say it comes through. Your spirit came through, like it came through when I visited, it came through when I read the book. It came through as I listened to, to interviews and prep, like it's, yes. And, ultimately the expense was worth it because of that quality that, that you have. And, the first historic site, that going back to Babson Park, Florida, Lake Wales, Florida, where Dad's from, they have this place called Bach Tower. Edward Bach he was a magazine editor, but he built this incredible like marble tower on the largest point in peninsular Florida, which is only like 300 feet, 300 feet above sea level. But you can see it anywhere you are in where Dad's from, always kind of there. And he had this quote, there was this quote, and his grandmother told him, make you the world a better place because you have been in it. Like basically leave the world with more than you got, leave the world with something. And it's always struck me, that kind of philosophy about life. Like, there's more to it than just the grind, right? It is the grind toward something. And this season in your life is this wonderful public history. And that may be not even be a term that but I have a PhD in public history, which is basically I have a PhD in history, but we call public history for the ways that we think about the history as it works in the world, how it matters, instead of just simply producing academic history for the sake of it, but also saying, well, here's where it goes. And it is a incredible public history institution from that, the efforts that you put into the historic preservation. I'm not here to spend your money, but now that all the effort's done, the pain is gone, you've spent the money, like it shows, and it will show forever. That's the piece that sometimes we got to be reminded of. So I give that to you as a little gift. All of this comes through to me, Teresa, every bit of it. I have a tremendous respect for what you've done. And I want to close with one thing. So Mad Dogs and Englishmen and the Learning to Live Together documentaries, both of them mean a lot to me. They're really fantastic. Mad Dogs has some of the very rare footage of the Fillmore East stage, actually, which is really cool to me. But of course, it's this, just this wonderful tale. Women have a very prominent role in Mad Dogs and Englishmen. They are not, other than the Butter Queen and her friend. Women are legit participants in the story. They're not just on the fringe. They get a lot of screen time, a lot of talk. One of the most tragic, heinous acts in rock history happens on that tour with Rita Coolidge and Jim Gordon knocking her out. And I was struck watching Learning to Live Together. I'm going to talk about the Rita thing in a second, but I want to first talk about how it is the women who carry the Mad Dogs and Englishmen story through in that documentary, and they shine. Mm-hmm. Claudia Lanier, Pamela Poland, Linda Wolf, whose book I'm with you. You've referenced her several times. Her book is just so wonderful. What a gift. And of course, Rita Coolidge. And I just wanted to talk to you about that. Women in rock and roll. And Leon, like in that era, it has a bit of a rep, whatever. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk specifically about, like, they were a very prominent part of the tour, part of the music, and a very prominent part of both of those stories. In fact, I feel like Learning to Live Together really told the female story really well.
Well, especially with Susan. She's such a great storyteller and she's so passionate. And so I love, Jesse is so great too. He's very in tune to women, the, producer, director of film. But Rita is so sweet. And you're right about Jim Gordon. I've had an opportunity to interview Rita. And, she's just amazing. I mean, her time with Leon and Christopherson and Jim Gordon. And I mean, she's just a fighter, but always held her head up high. Leon's first common law wife, he had just broken up with Rita when he went on that tour, and he brought Carla Brown, Native American, and mother of his firstborn, Blue. But, and then Claudia too. I mean, she's a really strong woman, and Claudia's been here with us a couple of times. If you're bored out of your gourd, but you'd probably like it, those interviews are on the Church Studios YouTube channel, and you can just, we talk about all different types of things, but they're really amazing. But yeah, I mean, women played a really significant role. And there's a woman that wasn't part of Mad Dogs and Englishmen, but she's definitely part of the rock and roll history. And her name is Chris Odell. And she is moving to Tulsa. We had a book signing and Q&A with her, but she was an employee of Apple Records when everything was happening with the Beatles, and all the way through the last performance on the rooftop. She was on the roof. And, of course, George wrote Miss Odell for her. Leon Russell wrote 2 songs for her.
Pisces Apple Lady.
And Pisces Apple Lady. And then she was one of the first female tour managers. So, she really reminds me of Rita and really of Claudia. I mean, how they took even, you think about Layla and Rita and her sister, who was tragically killed, role in writing that song and not ever getting songwriting credit. I mean, It's sick. And the same thing for, the groupie song, which is called Superstar. Right. She had a little role in that song. And, today they'll put, 50 people on a song, and, the labels do a good job capturing everyone, even if they came up with a couple of lyrics. But it's really a sad situation, but I don't think that tour would have been as successful as it is without the ladies, for sure.
They are such an important part of the band, right? And it shines through when you get their recollections and their talking, and the Rita story, like you said. So Chris Christopherson, just quickly, another serendipity moment here, but Chris Christopherson was my father's all-time favorite artist. And I saw him in 1989. I've got it on my Substack. It was called "I've Been Chasing the Magic Ever Since." It was the most, seeing an artist past his peak, but still giving it all every night. Little Stuart, Florida Lyric Theater. And I was like writing about it when he died. And I went to research it in the newspaper. And turns out he gave us 3 encores. We forced, legit, back in the day when an encore was the real deal. And it was that thing for me of like, oh, wow, this is music. This is what it can be. And I had forgotten about the encores. I just read that when I read the recollection. But Rita, has been this, kind of muse and inspiration, totally ripped off. You know how many millions of dollars she has lost on just those 2 records alone? Unfortunately for Bonnie Bramlett, her name is on a lot of songs. I was looking at that the other day. She got her name on a couple good ones, including Superstar, Groupie Superstar. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I noticed when the point that nobody left her alone after that happened.
Mhm.
Joe apparently, and she had a really close relationship after that happened, but they protected her in 2025, probably in 2000. An incident like that would have probably ended the tour, right? Or Gordon would have been, hauled off. I love the fact that something that overt at this day and age would probably get out rather than, sort of be swept under the rug. It doesn't make it right. And her sequence in the Learning to Live Together documentary, when I saw it in the theater, and I remember being, like shook by it, right? Because, she knew she dodged a bullet with him.
Yes.
And Chris O'Dell also, he pulled a knife on Chris O'Dell. Because he ended up with her when he went over to England after the Mad Dog stuff.
For a short period, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely a different time. There were so many shysters that worked in the industry, people trying to take advantage of musicians, just sign this, you don't need to read it. And it was just so bad. So everyone was paranoid. Of course, there was a lot of drug use, so
Yep.
that heightened things. So it was kind of an ugly time, in the entertainment industry. And, this concert in particular was thrown together so quickly. It's not like your band is like, hey, we love each other. Let's go on tour. You're used to them. I mean, these people were literally thrown together. It's so magnificent for how it was put together. And we have the typed, written strategic plan of it. And I just love reading it. It's just incredible. And so, I try to look at all sides, but it definitely, I'm enthralled by the music that came out of it, considering some of the dysfunction that was happening behind the scenes.
Yes. That's one of the biggest things that
Thank
comes
God for
out
the
of it.
women, because it would not, who knows what would have happened.
Right. And,
Yes, to your point. Thank you
I
all.
was really strategic when I wrote Play All Night that I was not. So I stopped my narrative with Barry Oakley's death, which was a year after Duane Allman's death. And I did that because I did not want to get into the sex and drugs part of the rock and roll story. My concern was purely the music. And I've been able to, sort of hew that line as closely as possible by talking about the music and its, cultural and social, impact. Because look, in any rock and roll story, there are bodies strewn all over the road, broken relationships with all kinds of people, including, with your own families, right? So it just becomes it does drive the music. I'm certain of that. But the piece I want to leave us on is Derek and Susan did not. I finally found out, did not form their band directly modeled after Mad Dogs and Englishmen, but as they were forming their magnificent intergalactic orchestra, the last band that truly plays the Mad Dogs and Englishmen catalog, I think, the one that plays, and it's not just when they recorded it, they were playing Mad Dog songs from the get-go, when they came out of the gate. Found a way, I think, to look at all that craziness and that dysfunction and say, we want all the good that comes out of this, but we want to try to make it as back to our sustainability thing. I say this to so many people, like everybody's like, man, I got to get moving. Dwayne, he accomplished all this at 24. I said, yeah, and he died at 24 too. There's a thing about making a path that is sustainable to yourself and to your soul. And they seem to have captured that. That spirit of Mad Dogs and Englishmen, if you will, that was Leon's concept, which is super, super, super cool. This hippie traveling carnival. And that's exactly what it looks like on the movie. It's what it sounds like on the record.
Yes.
So Tedeschi Trucks Band, I'll let you close it with, they are my people. They are my band, the one that I see the most and will see. I adore them. I've seen Derek since he was 13. It was the first time I saw him play. And I have a lot of admiration for how they go about their business.
Oh, they're amazing. And I really saw their true heart, because Derek rode a scooter from the Tulsa Theater, which is downtown Tulsa, and we're east of downtown. I don't know how many miles that is. I think it's 6 miles or something. And it was 110 degrees that day. And he came to the studio and was looking around. It was all sweaty. And he was just so like a kid in a candy store. And he said, "Oh, Susan will be here soon." I was like, "Oh my God, is she riding a scooter too?" And he said, "No, I think she's going to Uber." And I mean, they're just regular people. But when she came in, just her emotions, and she got teary eyed looking at, we have that lenticular of Leon Russell from Mad Dogs. It's Linda Wolf photo from 70 and then almost 50 years later on the reunion, and the way we superimpose the eyes and everything. But the genuine love and admiration for the man he was and the work he's done. And so they took their time. They weren't like, "Oh, we got to get ready for sound check." And I mean, they wanted to spend time there. And I really love that. And that's why they came back for when they launched their last leg of their tour, and they started in Tulsa to come back, and we were able to record them and do some things. So they're just really great people, and they are carrying on the legacy of what your podcast is all about, literally.
Yeah.
The modern.
Thank you. Thank you for sort of leaving that the particular circle unbroken, because it is indeed, that's what it is. It's conversation really from the Crossroads. They have made their own mark.
Right.
I think Derek could have made a whole lot of money doing the Guitar Hero thing as a young kid, and he didn't. And I've always, respected that. And, the connection, they are truly where the connection to the Allman Brothers story, comes back around to the Leon Russell story. But of course, it all began with Delaney and Bonnie and friends, which was news to me when I first trekked down this little rabbit hole. So, it's Teresa, it was wonderful to talk to you. Do me a favor, tell people how, if they want to get in touch with you or follow your stuff, do you have your spiel? Like, what do you want to, how do I get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is really through the church studio, and it's thechurchstudio.com, and you can get to all of our platforms. If you want to know a little bit about me, the School of Hard Knox.com is my website. It has a little bio and talks about the book some and some of my other projects. And it's Knox, K-N-O-X.
Yeah, School of Hard Knox, legit. And I will tell you, as a fellow graduate of the School of Hard, I do have a PhD, but I also have a PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. I granted it to myself a long time ago before I met the person. I met the dean of the school. So, but yes, from a fellow School of Hard Knocks or a person, and a fellow traveler, it was a joy. I was so looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, you're so sweet. I really enjoyed it. I love your knowledge and passion, and gosh, you have a degree in this stuff. So the words of affirmation really mean a lot to me. So thank you for that.
I will receive those and thank you for those as well. I loved the church, and honestly, I loved how it worked, because we went over to the Dillon and Guthrie centers, and I got to say, both of them were so phenomenal. It's so well done. Oh my Lord, shoot it directly into my veins. Tell every museum, this is how you do archives. This is how you do music history.
Because they're incredible. They're a strong community partner for us. And, they bring artists in, and we send artists over there, and it just come visit Tulsa, check out our music scene, our music museums, and everything we have to offer.
Next trip will be Cain's. I missed it. And hopefully OK Pop when it gets open. What is their timetable? Do you know?
It's probably going to be 2027.
Are they building a new building, or are they rehabbing something? The building's
been built. Now they're just building the exhibits.
Exhibitions, baby. This is how it goes. My friend, it was so great to talk to you. So I'm very grateful. You're killing it, Mama. And I know your kids are proud as hell of you. I certainly hope that they are, because man, you are a self-made human being, and in all of the greatest ways ever. So keep on trucking, Mama. Really, seriously, it's great to meet you again. Great to see you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay,
bye.
take care.